Champions aren't defined by how they start, but rather they're defined by how they finish. Finishing strong is more than just completing a task. It's about who are you becoming in that process. The final sprint in the race is actually where separation occurs, where excellence is ultimately decided. But you ultimately didn't come this far to stop now. Finishing strong is not just about the goal that's ahead, but it comes back to the champion that you're becoming. This better version of you. What's up, everybody? So good to see you. I'm your host, Justin Rothlingshofer, and welcome back to the Own It Show. If this is your first time here, again, first off, congratulations that you found us. I'm so grateful that you've just invested time. I think sometimes we underestimate the fact that people are listening to a podcast. They're investing time. They're investing time in their car ride, they're investing time in their workout, they're investing time maybe just in their walks around the block or even just listening to it while they're doing housework. But regardless, you're investing time to listen to something, trusting something enough that it is going to give you a value add over the course of this time. And I don't take that for granted, or I don't take that lightly either. And so I appreciate each and every one of you. And what I would love is if you do get something out of this, that you would continue to share this. We've had exponential growth in our podcast over the last 6 months, and I'm just so grateful to you guys, because that means that you are sharing it. That means that you are tagging it. That means that you are ultimately giving this to people that need to hear this message. And I don't think today is going to be any different. And so as we step into really where we're going today, I want to give you a glimpse into the future, because you've heard me talk about the backyard renovation that we're going to be doing, really taking a look at how do you actually have your environment around you built so that you can live life differently, built intentionally so that you can have a high performance lifestyle. What does this actually look like? And so we've been so blessed. We're actually going to be doing the entire backyard reno through HGTV. It's going to be very, very neat. They're going to do an online HGTV highlight of it. We've got his name is Mike Pyle. Mike Pyle is an outdoor landscape architect, and he's going to be doing the whole thing for us. He runs the show Inside Out on HGTV, so he's going to be coming in. But I say all of that because we're also going to be building a podcast studio outside. And the cool part about this is that this whole experience is going to start to change. You're going to get the same great content. You're going to get the same great information, but it is going to be elevated in how you receive it. There's going to be more entertainment value. The guests that we're going to bring on are going to be going through an experience, like through a sauna and a cold plunge every single time. We're going to make smoothies together, and they're going to be drinking those. So there's just going to be more integrated and engaged content that comes back to these types of things. And I won't name some of the guest lists that we have set up for 2025, but it's pretty cool. You're going to be seeing guests every 2 weeks. So over the course of the year, you're going to get 26 really high-powered guests that are going to be coming on, everything from celebrities to just health experts that are just changing the game, like really, really changing the game. And I'm just really excited to be aligned with them. So that's who you're going to be seeing. That's the experience that you're going to be exposed to. And so we're just tripling down on content for next year and making sure that we're providing you guys the best experience possible. And the other thing that's going to be coming with this is we are starting the year. Oh, let me back up. Those changes will not happen until March, because we are breaking ground in January. So starting the year, I am going to be doing a 5-part series called What Does It Look Like to Live Different? And so when we think about starting the year with a series, what does it look like to live different? We're going to be going through a 5-part series. So a 5-part series, diving deep into heart rate variability, diving deep into what does it look like to actually build a habit? What does your cells need in order to function? And then diving deep into each one of those components from a nutrition standpoint, from an exercise standpoint, from a sleep standpoint, and from a recovery standpoint. And so this is going to be a 5-part series. You will not want to miss this. You will want to save these. You will want to tag these. You will want to ultimately share these. You will want to just keep these deeply ingrained, because there is going to be so much value from, okay, what data are we looking at? What are we then stepping into? What are we applying in a more purposeful way? And then how are we using this more in-depthly? And so what it's going to look at is it's going to be like the 3 I's of every single thing. It's going to be the intention, so the data that we're going to grab. It's going to be the intervention or the protocol, the system that we're going to have in place. And then it's going to be the inevitable outcome or the result. So those 3 I's of how do we actually get it ingrained into your body, into your lifestyle, into this place that you do. So it is going to be so deep, so awesome, so applicable. I think that's the biggest word that I get excited about when I think about this series that I've put together is it's applicable. Yes, it's data driven. Yes, it's scientific. Yes, it's applied. Yes, it's going to be very life-changing, but it's going to be applicable. And applicable to the sense that you'll be able to grab it, follow it, and implement it. And that's what I'm most looking forward to. So that's going to start January 1. And so we've got some exciting things to look forward to. We've got a great series to start the year off. We've got a great up-leveling of entertainment value that's going to start in March as we get our backyard finished and the podcast studio and everything else done. However, first, we have to get there. And that's really what this podcast today is all about. I work very closely with Florida State Athletics, the 3 of their teams very specifically. And as I was sitting there with them, as we were going through this year, the message that I left them with this past week was, what does it look like to finish strong? What does it look like to finish strong? Because I think when we think about finishing strong, we oftentimes just don't do it. We oftentimes just kind of limp our way through the finish line. And just listeners, kind of just take yourself back to a couple moments, like in past years when you've entered into Q4, where you're like, man, we've traveled so much, we've done so much, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I'm just going to kind of mail in the last quarter in business. Has it been like, man, the holidays have just been so hard. We've traveled for Thanksgiving and now we've come home and now we're getting prepared for Christmas. And I'm trying to wrap up everything for the house, get the house all set up. And now Christmas is here and we're just kind of getting by and getting through New Year's. And in fact, I just don't actually start the new year off all that strong, because the mark of a champion is the ability to finish strong. Champions aren't defined by how they start, but rather they're defined by how they finish. How you finish something, quite frankly, is how you start the next thing. If you just limp across the finish line, you're going to be just limping into whatever the next start is, because there actually is no finish line. It's just a mindset of what we're stepping into next. And so I need you to sit back and go, okay, am I actually finishing strong or am I limping into things? I'll never forget, there was this race that I was watching and it was a triathlon, and this racer had just a terrible day, an absolutely awful day. He had had food poisoning the night before and he was supposed to be like a podium finisher, like top 3. And he comes around, he finishes his swim in 50th. He finishes his bike in 25th. And as he's finishing his run, he finishes 10th. And you could see this guy, like I still remember being on the side rail watching, and every step this guy took, he was grimacing. Every step this guy took, it was like he was putting every ounce of effort into it, even though he was in 10th. There was no way he was going to podium finish. There was no way he was going to get to where he needed to be. There was no way where he was going to be where he expected to be, but he still finished strong. And in an interview after that event, they said, why didn't you just pull out after the swim when you were 50th? Or why didn't you just pull out after the bike as you were 25th and there was no way you were going to come back and make the podium finish? He goes, because I have a championship mentality and a champion never quits. And it gave me goosebumps just as I said it. But it's the concept of, what does a champion mentality look like? And a champion finishes strong. A champion finishes strong. So they're not defined by how they start, but rather how they finish. And when we think about this year, it's actually the final stretch is where most people slow down, where distractions and fatigue tempt us to start to settle for good enough. But you ultimately didn't come this far to stop now. You didn't ultimately make the progress you have to stop now. You didn't eat so well and focus on getting a lot of these processed and refined carbohydrates, processed and refined sugars out of your diet, only to have the holidays wipe you clean. You didn't ultimately control your alcohol intake all year long and just to have it go under in this last little bit. You didn't focus on building a night routine and get quality sleep all year long just so that over the next month, it all goes out the door. No, it's about building so that when in times such as this, you can actually lean on them because these habits have been built. You're not trying to build something new. You've built something. And once something's built, you can lean on them. They can take weight. They can take some level of use. And that's what I want you to come back to, because finishing strong is more than just completing a task. It's more than just going to the gym. It's more than just having that meal. It's more than just going to bed on time. It's more than just checking the box. It's about who you come in the process. Who are you becoming in that process? It's about the resilience, about the commitment, about the refusal to let challenges define your outcome. It's about not accepting the barriers or the obstacles that have found their way into you, or the mindset of people around you who are like, oh no, that's good enough. Oh no, you've worked so hard, you deserve a break. Oh no, you go into this space and you can just accept mediocrity. No, it's about being willing to break through those barriers. It's about willing to live life differently than how you started last year, differently than how you finished last year. Because when you have a real encounter, that is when transformation happens. And so many people, they think they've become and have adopted this champion mentality. They think that they've adopted this live different lifestyle. But in actuality, it's just been pretend. Because until it's tested, it can't ultimately be transformed. Because if every test that comes around you fail, well, we haven't really seen any transformation. We've just tried. And so finishing strong is more than just completing a task. It's about who you're becoming in the process. That resilience, the commitment, the refusal to ultimately lie down amongst the obstacles. Because I want you to think about this for a second. It's that last it's that last rep in the gym when actual growth starts to happen. Kobe always said that he never started counting reps until it started to hurt. He never started counting the hours in which he was putting up free throws at the gym until he started to get tired. The final sprint in the race is actually where separation occurs. We see this in so many of these inspirational videos in the 4x100 relay, where you've got these men and women running around the track. And this one clip, the girl takes off and she falls. She falls and she's like a good 50, 60 meters behind everybody else. And she gets up and slowly starts chipping away. And she passes off to the next person and she starts catching up. And then she starts catching up. And all of a sudden in the last lap, the 4x4, this person is sprinting so quickly and you can see her catching. And literally at the last second possible, she breaks across the plane to win the race. The person that fell very first. And it's the final sprint in the race that ultimately separation occurs. It's the closing moments of a project where excellence is ultimately decided. It's not about how quickly you start. It's not about how perfectly you start. It's not about how energetically and motivated you start. It's about how do you finish? How do you finish? And so I want to leave you with three things of like, why does finishing strong matter? And then ultimately 4 things as to how to finish strong. So number 1, why finishing strong matters, the power of finishing strong. And then 4 things as to how to do that. And so the first thing that really makes the power of finishing strong matter is the fact that number 1, it builds confidence. It builds confidence. It will build confidence in you. Everybody out there wants confidence. They want to feel good. They want to feel powerful. They want to feel like they have the ability to do things. And the fact is you can actually manufacture confidence, but you can't manufacture it over a weekend. It gets manufactured by proving that who you say you are is actually who you are by the actions in which you take. And finishing strong is the biggest thing that you can do. Because when you push through the finish line, You prove to yourself that you're capable of more than you thought. It builds the belief that carries into every other facet of your life. We talked a little bit about that the other day when we were saying, how do you change your identity in your internal thermostat? And that had to do with ultimately changing the belief. That was the first thing you need, faith and belief, that you are who you say you are. You are who you're trying to become. You are who you're trying to develop into. And so that belief is ultimately what carries into every other aspect of your life. And finishing strong proves that. It builds that confidence to do that in every facet. The second thing that finishing strong does is it inspires others. Realize that finishing strong has nothing to do about you. It literally sets the example for your team, for your family, for your peers, and for those watching you that you don't have any idea. Because your grit can ignite somebody else's fire. Somebody else that has just a simple glowing ember inside of them. Somebody that's had a really hard year. Somebody that's been knocked down 4, 5, 6, 7 times in the last day. Somebody that has taken 4,000 kicks to the chin over the course of the last year. That little glowing ember that almost feels like it's going out. Your ability to finish strong can ultimately be the puff of oxygen that needs to hit that glowing ember that ignites that fire back inside somebody else. And so when you ultimately go, you know what, I'm just going to mail it in. Your kids are watching, your team is watching, your spouse is watching, God is watching, and you're watching. And so your ability to choose to finish strong, it ultimately inspires other people. It sets them up. It's one of the least selfish things you can do because it's giving of yourself, giving of your discipline, giving of your own mentality to somebody else, to elevate them, up-level them, be that rising tide. So number one is it builds confidence. Number two, it inspires others. And the third thing that why finishing strong matters is it defines your legacy. People remember how you finish. And this is like a little bit vulnerable for me in the past when I've gotten different jobs or you've transitioned out of something else. It's been like, okay, hey, I'm done. I know I'm moving on to something else. And I didn't always dot all the I's and cross all the T's. I didn't tick and tie everything before I left. It was like you gave so much for 2 years, so much for 4 years, so much for wherever it was that you were. And then it just kind of fizzled out. And the thing about it is people don't remember how well you started. People don't remember how fast you started. People don't remember how much effort you gave. All they remember is how you finished. There's this quote. It says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Same thing is people will never remember what you said. They'll remember how you made them feel. People won't remember what you did. They'll remember how you made them feel. And so finishing strong makes people feel something that is so heavy, just as finishing poorly makes them feel something heavy. So people remember how you finish, whether that's in business, in health, in life. Leaving unfinished work or giving up early sends a message that is more powerful than starting really strong or even being consistent throughout. Is how do you finish? What does that look like? It is a characteristic that defines who you are. But when you finish strong, you're able to show people what's possible. You're able to show people what actually goes on inside of you. It's a mindset of what is there. So the power of finishing strong is that number one, it builds confidence. Number two, it inspires others. And number three, it defines your legacy. And so when we think about this, you're sitting there going, yeah, I want to finish strong. Yeah, this is really important to me. Yeah, I want to be that person that finishes strong. Okay, well, how do we get there? How do we get there? And there's 4 steps that we have to think about how do we finish strong. And I'm talking about finishing strong. This is Christmas week. We're talking about December 22nd here. And when we sit into this, we've got Christmas in 2 days. We've got this Christmas week. We've got New Year's that's following next week. Christmas falls on a Wednesday, literally the middle of the week. It's easy just to coast through the next 2.5 weeks and not even be aware. Maybe some of you have felt that over even like past couple of weeks from Thanksgiving leading up to Christmas. And so how to finish strong? Number one is you have to connect with the burn. I talk about this often. Other people call it the why. I think it's deeper than that. That's why I have it in my introduction, is this burning sensation. I talked about those glowing embers inside of you. Every single person has these coals that sit inside of us, this singular coal that is burning. Sometimes it's on fire and ignited. Sometimes it's kind of a little bit not as glowy, if you will. But regardless, it's still burning. And you know it because when somebody asks you about it, it's a breath of oxygen on it. When you start to act in it, it's another breath of oxygen. When you start to think about it and plan on it, breath of oxygen. When you start to watch content on it, breath of oxygen. And so in order to finish strong, I need you to connect with that burn and the why as to why you started. Remember why you started in the first place. Remember why it mattered in the first place. Remember why you care about this thing in the first place. Remember why you ultimately dedicated yourself to this in the first place. And let that burn fuel you. Let that ember well up inside you so that you start to actually take action. The second thing is you have to focus on one step at a time. Don't let the enormity of the finish overwhelm you. Don't let the enormity of the task at hand overwhelm you. Ultimately, break it into small, manageable actions. It may not look the same during these next 2 weeks, but it doesn't mean that the action steps still don't matter. They might happen at different times in the day because your schedule is a little bit off. That's okay. You might give yourself maybe a little bit less time. If you usually spent 6 hours doing something, maybe it's only 3 hours, but it's still a deep, focused, intentional 3 hours or a deep, intentional 30 minutes. And so I want you to break it into those manageable action steps. Make it something that you can do. Because I talked about this with David this morning during our workout, is he said, you know what? I'm so appreciative of the association, the different people I've been associated with, because it's changed who I am looking back over the course of the last year. And I said, David, I'm so proud of you for like the changes that you've made and who you've become and who you continue to become every day. Like, it's inspiring to watch. But at the same time, it's not just the association, it's the actions that you've put in place. You've been willing to do this one step at a time, and that's what matters. And so I want you to break it into manageable actions and don't let the enormity of that finish ultimately overwhelm you. Which goes to number 3, and I need you to throw out motivation. I don't care about motivation. I want you to lean into discipline because motivation fades. Motivation's fleeting. Motivation may come and go, but discipline is what carries you through. Discipline is something that you can build a house on. Discipline is what you can build a foundation on. And so to keep showing up is what's critical, even when it's hard, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it's inconvenient. And I would say, don't show up even when it's hard. I would say show up especially when it's hard, because that goes back to why there's power in finishing strong, is because it builds confidence. It builds massive levels of confidence that you're completely unaware of. I go back to even the reflecting on the year and looking at the high rocks that I ran. Like, man, that was just incredible. The confidence that it built in me, the ability to continue to come back to this. The 100-miler in January is going to do the same thing for me. So I want you to ultimately lean into the disciplines that have gotten you there, not the motivation that you think is ultimately going to carry you through. And then number 4 is I need you to visualize the finish line. See the finish line. When you close your eyes, I want you to see and visualize yourself getting to whatever that point is. But once you see yourself getting to that point, I want you to forget the outcome, and I want you to focus on the feeling. Do you feel a sense of freedom? Do you feel a sense of lightness? Do you feel a feeling of pride? Do you feel a sense of excitement? Do you feel a feeling of accomplishment? What is that feeling? Because remember, people will forget about how or what you said or what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And the same thing is with you. That's why visualizing that, crossing that finish line, accomplishing that mission, accomplishing that goal, accomplishing what you've set out to do. It's not the thing that matters. It's the feeling that will ultimately create the further disciplines in order to allow you to do things one step at a time and connect you back deeper to that burn. You see how all four of those things are connected? Visualizing the feeling at the finish line will ultimately allow you to tap into disciplines that will allow you to have the consistency as one step at a time, that will ultimately bring that why or that burn to fruition, to the top. That's how you finish strong. And so whatever that is for you in this season, I want you to tap into that. Because the thing that you need to realize, the truth, is that the finish line isn't a place, it's a mindset. It's how you approach the final moments, the tough decisions, the challenges, the obstacles that determine whether you're going to coast your way to the finish or you're going to conquer your way to the finish. It's the difference of whether you're going to ultimately compromise your way to the finish or stay committed through the finish. It's the difference of whether you're going to fall victim to the obstacle or whether you're going to take ownership into the finish. And so I want you to ask yourself, how do you want to finish this year? How do you want to finish this project? How do you want to finish this relationship? How do you want to finish this chapter of life in 2024? Because every finish is the beginning of what's next. Every finish, whether you decide to limp across the finish line, will determine how you start in the next. And so finishing strong is not just about the goal that's ahead, but it comes back to the champion that you're becoming. This better version of you, this version of who you're wanting to tap into, this ability to live different only exists if you're willing to do it consistently. And so as you lean into this, as you tap into this, as you finish strong through 2024, I want you to make sure that you realize the implications, that it's going to build unrelenting confidence in you. It is going to inspire others to do more than they could have ever thought possible. And number 3, it's going to define your legacy. What do you leave behind? And the way that you're going to do that is connect to your why, connect to the burn, focus on one step at a time, lean into the disciplines that creates, and visualizing yourself with the feeling of what that looks like. Come January 1st, you're no longer in planning mode. You're in execution mode because you finished strong. We know that success is different, so own your different, and we'll see you guys next week.